I've lived in Willow Creek Estates for 9 years, long enough to know which neighbors smile to your face and which ones smile while stabbing you in the back. But nothing prepared me for what the HOA did after my wife's accident. My name's Mark. I'm a 52-year-old electrician, semi-retired, and married to the most incredible woman I know, Laura. Last year, Laura suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. Overnight, everything changed. We had to retrofit the house just so she could move around. Widened doorways, a stair lift, and most importantly, a ramp from the driveway to the front door. I built the ramp myself, nothing fancy, just a sturdy, smooth, handrail-lined ramp so Laura could get to her doctor's appointments without me having to lift her like luggage. I cleared it with our city inspector, made sure it met ADA guidelines, and honestly, I was proud of it. That pride didn't last long. 2 weeks after installation, I got a letter from the Willow Creek HOA. You are in violation of Article 4, Section 7, unapproved structural modifications to the front of your home. There was no warning, no conversation, just a fine $200 per day until the ramp was removed. I thought it had to be a mistake. Surely if I explained, someone would understand. I showed them documentation from Laura's doctor. I showed them the city's inspection certificate. I even invited the HOA president, Douglas Reeds, to our home to see the ramp himself. Doug didn't even look at it. He just stood there in his pressed polo, arms crossed, with that smug smirk like he was doing us a favor by even showing up. You should have submitted it for approval first, he said. Rules are rules. If we make an exception for you, we have to make it for everyone. I looked him dead in the eye and said, it's a medical ramp for my wife. You want me to carry her over the steps every day? Doug didn't flinch. Then you'll just have to pay the fines until the board votes, and that takes time. That was the moment something snapped in me. It wasn't just about a ramp. It was about control. About a group of petty little tyrants more obsessed with mailbox paint colors than actual people. For the next 6 weeks, we were fined relentlessly, $200 a day, stacking up like bricks on my chest. I tried to fight it legally, but the HOA's bylaws were airtight. My only option was to remove the ramp and resubmit it for approval through their snail-paced process. That could take months. Laura couldn't wait months. So I started digging, figuratively and literally. Every evening after work, I'd take my coffee out to the backyard and stare at Doug's house, which sat catty-corner to ours. He had a tall fence, but from the right angle you could just make out the shimmer of his pool through the slats. Funny thing is, I didn't remember there being a pool when we first moved in. One weekend, I struck up a conversation with old Mr. Halverson, who lived next door to Doug. Doug added that pool about 4 years ago, he said. Did it all hush-hush during winter. No construction signs, no permits on the window. Just one day, boom, pool. Now that got my attention. The next day, I called the county building office. I posed as a buyer looking into permits on properties in the neighborhood. When I gave them Doug Reed's address, the clerk hesitated. Doesn't look like there are any records for a pool there. Are you sure? Oh, I was sure. It took me 3 weeks to gather what I needed. First, I confirmed through satellite imagery that the pool didn't exist in older aerial photos, but it was clearly visible in recent ones. Second, I had a buddy in the fire department run a check on the home's hydrant access and safety codes. Turns out Doug's property wasn't up to code with a pool installed, and the final cherry on top, I filed a FOIA request to the county for all permit applications from Doug's property for the past 5 years. Nothing. Not one single permit for excavation, plumbing, or electrical for a pool. Doug's precious little oasis was a time bomb of violations. But I didn't want to just report him. No, that would be too easy. I wanted everyone to know exactly what kind of man was fining a disabled woman for needing a ramp while swimming in a pool he illegally built. So I got creative. I started with an anonymous tip to our local NBC affiliate. They had a reporter known for consumer protection and small-town corruption exposés. I sent her everything. The images, the documents, the footage I'd quietly filmed from my upstairs window showing Doug cleaning the pool, using the illegal lighting, and even hosting parties. Within days, she was hooked. She called me back saying, "If half of this is true, this guy's toast." I told her, "It's all true. I've got more if you need it." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, where I handed over a neatly labeled folder. She promised to give me anonymity. All I asked was that Laura's story be told too. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Doug must have sensed something because he suddenly became nice. He left a compromise proposal in our mailbox, suggesting we resubmit the ramp paperwork, and he'd personally advocate for expedited approval. I laughed out loud when I read it. He had no idea what was coming. The night before the story aired, I got a call from the reporter. She sounded giddy. "Just wait until you see the 6 o'clock news tomorrow," she said. "This guy's about to have the worst pool party of his life." The next evening, Laura and I sat down early, dinner plates on our laps, TV turned to Channel 8. At exactly 6:01 p.m., the segment began. I'll never forget the way the reporter started it. Willow Creek HOA President Douglas Reeds enforces strict regulations on homeowners, but what happens when he breaks the very rules he demands others follow? There it was, in crystal clear HD, footage of Doug's backyard, his glistening pool, the LED lighting, the outdoor sound system, all of it, followed by time-lapse clips showing when the pool first appeared in satellite images. They even included a snippet of Laura's ramp story. The camera showed the modest structure I'd built, and the reporter narrating how we were fined $200 per day for simply trying to help my disabled wife access her home safely. Then they dropped the hammer. Channel 8 Investigates has found no permits filed for the pool's construction, plumbing, or electrical systems. County officials confirmed an investigation is now underway. Doug's name and address flashed on screen for just a moment, long enough for neighbors to recognize it. The fallout? Immediate. Within hours, the Willow Creek neighborhood Facebook group was on fire. Screenshots of the segment circulated like wildfire. One post had over 200 comments in 2 hours. People were furious, not just about the pool, but about the hypocrisy. Turns out, Doug had made a lot of enemies over the years, fining people for flower beds, threatening one guy for having a political flag on his porch, and forcing an elderly couple to repaint their shutters 3 times for being the wrong shade of beige. Now the king of the HOA was exposed for violating more rules than anyone else. By morning, Doug's house had become a media circus. 2 local news vans parked outside, and a county inspector knocked on his door before 9 a.m. I watched from my upstairs window as Doug tried to talk his way out of it. He was red-faced, stammering, waving papers around like that would make the pool disappear. By Friday, the county had issued an official stop-use order on the pool, yellow tape across the gate, and a massive fine for unpermitted construction. I later heard it was over $30,000. And the cherry on top? The HOA board called an emergency meeting that weekend, without Doug. By Monday, a letter went out to all Willow Creek residents. Due to recent events and pending investigations, Douglas Reeds has resigned as HOA president, effective immediately. He didn't just resign, he sold his house 3 weeks later and moved out in the dead of night. No goodbye, no explanations, just gone. Now here's the part that made it all worth it. 3 days after the segment aired, I got a knock at my door. It was one of the newer board members, a retired nurse named Clara. She looked embarrassed. "Mark, I'm sorry for everything. We had no idea. If we had known what Doug was up to..." I stopped her. "You had my permit and medical documents. You knew what the ramp was for." She nodded. "You're right, and we were wrong." She handed me a folder. Official HOA approval for the ramp, retroactively signed and sealed. They also wiped all fines from my account. I wanted to be mad, but honestly, I was too tired, too relieved, and I knew Laura didn't need more stress. We just wanted peace, and we finally had it. Now, weeks later, things have settled. The HOA is quieter, the rules more human. Clara even led a push to revise the guidelines for accessibility modifications. Now residents with medical needs get expedited approvals without penalties. As for me, I still take my coffee out to the backyard every evening. Only now, when I look at Doug's old house, I smile. The new family has 2 young kids, a puppy, and, you guessed it, no pool. Sometimes revenge doesn't need shouting. It just needs patience, a sharp mind, and a bit of sunlight on the truth. And if you ask me whether the ramp was worth the fight, every single inch of it.